Hello and welcome to Filling the Sink, a podcast from Catalan News. My name is Beliaeva, and today we're talking about Catalonia's new financing model. While most people were away on vacation this summer, it was announced that the Catalan Socialists had made a deal with the pro-independence Esquerra Republicana to create a new finance model in Catalonia that, among other things, would give Catalonia more economic independence and create what some people might call a fair system. Other more critical voices, on the other hand, have characterized this as poison to the welfare state. But what does this new model actually entail, and how is it different from the current tax system? On today's podcast, we will explain all you'd want to know about this new model, from what the changes will mean for Catalonia and Spain, to the concept of the so-called solidarity payment, and we will also discuss whether this new plan will actually see the light of day. And today I am joined by Lorcan Doherty. Welcome back, Lorcan. It's been a very long time.
Thanks, Leah. Yeah, I was off on paternity leave. It's good to be back.
It's great to have you back. So I just mentioned that this new finance model was born out of a deal between the Catalan Socialists and the pro-independence Esquerra Republicana. What else can you tell me about this?
Yeah, so as you know, we had elections a few months back, and the socialist candidate, Salvador Illa, was elected new Catalan president at the beginning of August. Illa reached the magic figure of 68 votes exactly with the help of two other parties, one of whom is pro-independence Esquerra Republicana. So in return for their support, Esquerra's demands included the implementation of this so-called singular financing model, unique financing model for Catalonia, which essentially means that Catalonia will be responsible for the collection and management of all taxes paid in Catalonia through the Catalan Tax Office, which is a big change.
Okay. And now that the deal has been made, I'm really interested in knowing how it was received by the other political parties, both in Catalonia but also in Spain.
Of course, well, Esquerra, as I said, they've used this phrase a lot. It's the key to the safe. The Socialists who came to the agreement with Esquerra over it have also been in favour of it.
Catalunya és solidària. Sempre ho ha estat.
Catalonia has always shown solidarity. It will continue to do so, the Catalan president Salvador Illa said. But Spanish socialists have not exactly been on the same page as the Catalan socialists. Bit of a bad pun there, because Emiliano García Paje, or Page, you might say, who's the president of the Castilla-La Mancha region and a socialist, he says that this deal brings the Socialist Party's identity up for revision and he won't allow it. So there's a bit of division there.
Yes.
Pedro Sánchez, the leader of the Socialist Party in Spain and Prime Minister, of course, as well, he is behind it, as you would expect, and he says that it's a common sense measure, this new financing system. He didn't really talk about Catalonia specifically. He talks more in general terms about all Spain's autonomous communities, that it'll reduce differences, it'll be fairer, and he talks a lot about the co-responsibility of the regional governments.
Mm-hmm. And that was kind of interesting, because we had two different interpretations of the meaning of co-responsibility, of who he was referring to.
I thought he might be getting at the People's Party, who are in control in a lot of regional governments, kind of saying that they shouldn't be cutting taxes.
Mm-hmm. And my interpretation was that he was actually talking to the Catalans and saying that with this new finance model, well, they would still have to share the responsibility of the economy in Spain.
Exactly. Yeah, it could well be. Speaking of the People's Party that I mentioned, one of their MPs, Cuca Gamarra, she referenced a well-known phrase in Spain. Esto no es café para todos. This is not coffee for everyone. Mm-hmm. She said it was poison for the welfare state. I suppose we should explain the coffee for everyone.
Exactly.
I guess
what
it just means
mean?
Because you've got all these various regions in Spain, the different autonomous communities, that there isn't too much inequality between them, that they are treated equally, mm-hmm. and that there isn't too many special dispensations.
Yeah, and that you can't have everything, but you have to compromise on some things. That was kind of the idea behind the phrase during the Spanish transition to democracy at the time. So what about the reactions in Catalonia? You mentioned before the two main parties, but what about the other parties? How do they feel?
Well, for example, if you look at the reaction from pro-independence parties, both Junts and CUP, obviously very different political, one very left-wing, the other more centre-right, but they both have said the same thing, that this deal does not amount to fiscal sovereignty or economic sovereignty. So, yeah, both quite critical of the deal.
Yeah, and in addition to that, Laia Estrada from CUP actually said that this plan will not happen.
Yeah, well, at the minute, it's an agreement between these two parties in the Catalan parliament, the Esquerra and the Socialists, but actually it has to be agreed by the Spanish Congress in Madrid, so it does have a way to go before it's a reality.
Exactly. And let's just talk a little bit about what the current tax system is all about in Catalonia.
Okay, well, it's the same in Catalonia as it is for most autonomous communities in Spain. There is a different arrangement for the Basque Country and Navarre, which we can talk about later. But in Catalonia, the tax revenue is split. It's shared between the Spanish government and the Catalan government, although the Spanish tax agency kind of has control over the management of pretty much all the taxes. Once those taxes are collected, then there is a levelling mechanism, which basically means that places like Madrid, Catalonia, the Balearic Islands, where the tax revenues are higher, there's a share of their tax revenue that gets redistributed to places like Murcia, Extremadura and other autonomous communities with lower tax revenues. After that, there are adjustment funds. And the problem from a Catalan point of view is that this leads to somewhat arbitrary results where the actual amount of tax revenues is not then really related at all to the actual money that you have to spend in each autonomous community. So not only is it leveled out, but it's kind of
random.
Yeah, it's kind of randomized a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
And another issue with the current tax system as well is that the actual amount that autonomous communities are in control of is quite low if you look at the services that they then are in charge of offering.
Yes, because in Catalonia and in other autonomous communities in Spain, they have a lot of competencies over what they have to do. So, for example, education, health.
Yeah, social services, things that, require a lot of investment, a lot of spending. And at the minute, the money that is controlled by each autonomous community doesn't really cater for all those services.
And then what does the new model propose?
Well, basically, Catalonia would have full control over all the taxes collected in the territory, 100%. We'll hear later from a couple of experts I spoke to at the University of Barcelona, and they explained to me as well that in the new model, Catalonia would make a contribution to finance the services that Spain provides Catalonia, things like defence, transport, border controls, the royal family, these kind of things that are not specific to Catalonia, like health and education.
Mm-hmm.
As well as that, we've got a solidarity payment, which is basically, to reduce inequality between regions. So if Catalonia has a lot of tax revenue,
they have to hand a little bit of that over to other communities who have less.
Yes. Another thing included in the agreement between Esquerra and Socialists, which would be different from what's come before, is that there's a principle, well, in Spanish it would be ordinalidad, or in Catalan ordinalidad, which basically means keeping the order of the autonomous community so that there's a direct link between how much territory gives and receives. Put it this way, Madrid has the highest tax revenues. So after the taxes are redistributed in a fair manner, Madrid would still be the autonomous community with the most tax revenues. That's basically the principle, which isn't the case as it stands. So in summary, the new model, Catalonia collects all the taxes, pays the Spanish state for services, and also pays a solidarity payment that goes to other autonomous communities, but respecting this order.
Mm-hmm. That was a great summary, by the way.
It took me a while, but I got there.
Okay, so we have talked about what this new plan will look like compared to what the current system is like. But I think one thing that a lot of people may wonder is how will this affect me? How will this affect you and I, Lorcan?
Yeah, definitely. Are taxes going to go up? Are they going to go down?
Exactly.
It's really difficult to say because the plan is a framework. It hasn't been implemented yet. And I mean, even at the minute, each autonomous community in Spain does have control to change taxes and raise or lower certain taxes. So that can already happen. How that will change in the future, we can't really say. It'll depend on whatever government's in charge as well. I think what we can say is that for Catalonia as a whole, it will depend on the exact figure of these solidarity payments, the money that it sends to Spain for the services that Spain provides to Catalonia. And again, we don't really know what those figures are going to look like. One thing we can say for sure is that the Catalan tax agency is going to be busy. It's going to have to grow because they are going to be managing all the taxes.
They're going to be managing all the taxes. And you said before that now they manage...
Well, 9% is the figure that the previous Catalan government said, yeah.
So that is just a huge change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose at an individual level, that's something a change you might notice, that instead of dealing with the Spanish tax agency, you're dealing with the Catalan tax agency.
Mm-hmm. And what will the consequences be for Spain? Is that something that we can say?
Well, some sources have said that if it ends up that Catalonia keeps more of the tax revenues raised here, which is part of the idea behind the plan, it means that there will be less for the rest of Spain. Some people have said it could be an economic loss of more than €2 billion annually for Spain, less money to redistribute to other autonomous communities. Again, it's hard to know exact figures. So we could see an increase in inequality between regions. But this agreement is between two parties in the Catalan Parliament. To actually change the law, it has to be approved by the Spanish Congress. So it will need approval from representatives from all the autonomous communities in Spain. So this potential for losses might be addressed at that stage. One, there might be some kind of mechanism where Pedro Sanchez decides, oh no, all the autonomous communities are actually going to get more money from central government. So no one's losing out. Café para todos.
Exactly, café para todos. We don't know yet. We just have to wait and see. And you talked to Nuria Bosch and Maite Vilalta, who are the co-directors of the Fiscal Federalism Observatory at the Barcelona Institute of Economics. And they're both professors of economics at the University of Barcelona. That was a very long introduction. So they must be the right people to ask questions, right?
Absolutely. The two perfect people to speak to. Talk to them about a whole range of topics related to this. But here we're going to hear from them specifically, talk about how the new financial model for Catalonia compares to other places, both in Spain, like the Basque Country and Navarre, and also elsewhere, places like Germany, Canada and the UK. What this new proposed financing model is not, Nuria Bosch says, is an economic agreement like the one in the Basque Country and Navarre. Despite what certain politicians have said, in Catalonia the model is different. In the Basque Country and Navarre, a financial contribution is made to the central Spanish state for the services that the state provides in those territories. There's a calculation to work out the amount owed, but in the Catalan agreement, there's no mention of that. Instead, it says that the equivalent contribution will be made by the central government having a share of the taxes raised in Catalonia, which is actually how it works at the minute. This is an important nuance, Nuria stresses. So, will this mean that there will be more financial resources for Catalonia? Well, Nuria explains, it will depend on the solidarity payments and this payment for services provided by the state. We could end up financially exactly the same while administering all taxes, and that would really be a bad solution, she says.
No, una mica la pregunta que feies, no? Què vol dir?
What does it mean to be able to have the key to the safe? Maite Vilalta asks. Right now, Spain's autonomous communities, including Catalonia, already receive some significant taxes. For example, 50% of personal income tax and 50% of VAT. So half of what Catalan citizens pay for these taxes goes to the coffers of the Catalan government. But what happens, Maite explains, is that we pay these taxes to the Spanish tax agency, so we could say that they have the key to the safe at the moment. Catalan revenue is in the hands of the Spanish tax agency and their management, good or bad. When politicians say Catalonia should have this key, it means that Catalonia should look after the management of these big taxes.
Això ens semblaria ens aproparia al que...
Would this be similar to what happens in other countries? Maite asks. Well, for example, the German states, or Länder, manage and administer all taxes paid by citizens in Germany. So if we were German citizens, we would pay taxes to our state and they would manage transferring the agreed corresponding amount to the federal government. But we could say that it is the individual states who have the key to managing taxes. Does this happen everywhere? No, because each country has its own system. For example, in Canada, tax administration is not in the hands of the Canadian provinces, except for Quebec. Really, Maite says, it all depends on a relationship of trust and proper functioning of the various administrations. Therefore, we could say that when Catalonia, with this new model, wants to take over this management, it is because, Maite says, we believe that it could be done better from here. I asked Núria, are there existing tax systems around the world that could serve as a model for Catalonia and Spain?
A veure, especificitats n'hi ha.
There are, Núria says, specificities. As mentioned, Canada, Quebec has a specific model which is related to the general model that Canadian provinces have. In the United Kingdom, Scotland also has a specific model, even though the UK is not a federal country. Here, we would be looking at something similar, an asymmetrical system, which in fact already exists because of Navarre and the Basque Country, and now Catalonia too. Perhaps the most important difference is that in these federal countries, there is overlapping taxation. For example, in Quebec, there is the provincial tax and the federal tax, two taxes. In Catalonia, on the other hand, there would only be one tax. The Basque model, by the way, is unique around the world, Núria explains. Elsewhere, federal governments always collect taxes in each region too. And here, the agreement says that Spain will continue to take a share of taxes raised in Catalonia. So Spain will have sovereignty over its share of tax, as would Catalonia.
Sí, no, jo crec que, tal com diu la Núria...
Maite agrees that this new model could bring us closer to a strong federal-type model.
Si hi ha una característica comú...
If there is a common feature with federal tax systems, she says, it is the principle that a citizen has to pay their tax to the government that offers them a particular service. Therefore, with a decentralised federal state, it is logical that taxpayers pay different governments because they receive different services from different governments. Catalonia wants a greater share when collecting taxes because the Catalan government is responsible for offering the majority of public services to citizens. The federal concept model takes this direct relationship into account. Federal models then address a problem that this system raises, which is inequality, and that is why they have levelling mechanisms. So we could say that the common feature of a federal model that this agreement aims to get closer to is making tax autonomy compatible with fairness.
Thanks to Núria Bosch and Maite Vilalta for speaking with us. What is the next step to getting this proposal approved?
Well, for any changes to be made and how autonomous communities are financed, the law needs to be changed. This has to be approved by the Spanish Congress. We said that earlier. As regular listeners to the podcast will know, the minority government have to kind of scrape together votes from lots of smaller parties in order to get anything passed in Congress. So I'm sure we'll see lots of negotiation around that. It'll then go to the Senate, where the People's Party, the Conservative People's Party, have a majority. So it'll be delayed there for a while, like we've seen with, for example, the amnesty law.
And in the Congress, will Junts vote in favour?
Yeah, that is a big unknown. With most bills going through Congress, it is coming down to will Junts support it or not. They obviously gave their support for Pedro Sánchez to become the Prime Minister again. That's why he's in charge. But in recent weeks, the Socialists and Junts have seen a cooling off in their relationship. I think it's safe to say the whole situation with Puigdemont and the amnesty isn't working out as they had anticipated. And, well, we've seen that Junts have also been critical of this specific deal. They're saying that it doesn't mean sovereignty just because a Catalan tax agency will be kind of managing taxes if the money doesn't end up in Catalonia. They've said it's not the key to the safe.
Yes. And I think one thing that we really have to keep in mind when we talk about Junts is that everything that is not independence is something that they're not really interested in.
Yeah, it's kind of all or nothing, isn't
Exactly.
it? Okay, this might bring a little more fiscal autonomy to Catalonia.
But it's not independent.
It's not independent, so we're not interested, yeah.
So basically, Pedro Sánchez has his work cut out for him. But I'm also guessing that the opposition parties...
They're sure to vote against it, which just means that the socialists will need the votes of everyone else, basically, in Congress to get it through.
Mm-hmm. And if it does politically get approved, do you think, Lorcan, that it's realistic for it to be implemented by 2026?
Well, this is a thing. I'm not an economist. I'm not a tax expert. I have been living here in Catalonia for about 5 years and working as a journalist. And based on my experience, that something this big would change by 2026, I think it's going to be impossible. There's the political side of it, we've mentioned, but just the logistics of it. The Catalan tax agency would have to grow exponentially,
They would have to hire a lot of new people, open new offices, unless they could work out some deal taking over the old offices and the employees
of the Spanish tax agency. But you can imagine unions and employees might not be in favor of that, and it seems to be quite a complicated transition. But yeah, to imagine that by 2026 we'll be doing our tax returns for the Catalan tax agency, I see it as very, very optimistic timeline.
I would definitely have to agree with that. And something that I always say when we talk about Catalan and Spanish politics is that we'll just have to wait and see. And another thing that I always also repeat in this podcast is it's time for the Catalan phrase of the week. So, Lorcan, will you do the honors?
Yeah, it's not an idiom as such, but it's something we've heard loads today. It is la clau de la caixa.
La clau de la caixa, the key to the safe.
Exactly, the key to the safe. I don't know, I think they need to update it for the modern era. Maybe the el pin de la caixa, no, the pin to the safe.
I think that's worth thinking about. And that's all we have time for today. Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe to Filling the Sink wherever you get your podcast if you haven't already. Thanks again to Nuria Bosch and Maite Vilalta for speaking with us. Thanks to you, Lorcan.
Thanks to you, Leah.
And we'll be back again next Saturday with another episode of Filling the Sink. On behalf of the team here at Catalan News, I'm Leah Beliaeva, wishing you a great weekend. Fins aviat. Adeu.